The air was thick with tension, salt spray mixed with the low hum of powerful engines. On the shimmering expanse of the South China Sea, a dramatic scene unfolded. A small flotilla of Philippine naval vessels steamed steadily forward. A small flotilla of Philippine Coast Guard vessels steamed steadily forward. Their mission, to resupply a remote military outpost. But they were not alone. Looming on the horizon were the imposing gray hulls of Chinese warships. These were not friendly escorts. They were a maritime wall, sent to block the way. The radio crackled with warnings from the Chinese side. The message was clear: turn back now. This was a direct challenge. The Filipino sailors held their course. Their resolve was firm. This was more than just a delivery run, it was a statement. A declaration that these waters, despite Beijing's sweeping claims, were also theirs. The Chinese vessels maneuvered aggressively, their bows cutting through the waves, coming dangerously close to the smaller Philippine ships. It was a high-stakes game of chicken played with thousands of tons of steel. Every sailor on deck knew that a single miscalculation, a moment of lost nerve, could ignite a conflict with devastating consequences. To understand this naval face-off, you must understand the stakes. The South China Sea is a lifeline for the global economy. It is a superhighway for international shipping. Goods from factories in Asia travel through these waters on their way to markets in Europe, the Americas, and beyond. Any disruption here sends ripples across the world, affecting supply chains and consumer prices. This strategic importance is why so many nations, including the United States, have a vested interest in ensuring freedom of navigation. The sea is simply too important to be controlled by a single power. Beyond trade, the sea holds immense natural wealth. Geologists believe the seabed is rich with undiscovered oil and gas deposits. For energy-hungry nations, these resources promise energy independence and economic growth. The sea is also one of the world's most productive fishing grounds. It provides food security and livelihoods for millions across Southeast Asia. China's claim, the controversial Nine-Dash Line, is at the heart of the conflict. Beijing says it has historical sovereignty over these waters. For decades, multiple nations have laid claim to its islands, reefs, and resources. In 2016, Manila won a landmark ruling at The Hague that invalidated China's Nine-Dash Line and backed the Philippines' exclusive economic zone. The mission that sparked the August 2025 standoff was both routine and revolutionary. The objective was to resupply the BRP Sierra Madre, a dilapidated World War II-era ship deliberately grounded on the Second Thomas Shoal in 1999 to serve as a makeshift military outpost. This rusting hulk is a potent symbol of Philippine sovereignty in a fiercely contested area. For years, resupply missions have been a cat-and-mouse game, often harassed and sometimes blocked by Chinese vessels. But this time was different. This mission was more assertive, more public, and more defiant than ever before. Manila's strategy was multifaceted. First, it embedded journalists on its Coast Guard ships. This ensured that any aggressive action by China would be documented and broadcast to the world in real time. It was a move designed to shine a bright international spotlight on Beijing's behavior, transforming a remote maritime incident into a global news story. The presence of cameras made it harder for China to use overwhelming force. Second, the mission was not just about delivering food and water. The Philippine government has become increasingly vocal in calling out Chinese aggression. President Ferdinand Marcos Jr.'s administration has pivoted away from the previous government's more conciliatory approach. This new, bolder stance reflects a growing national consensus that appeasement has failed, and that a more robust defense of the country's sovereign rights is necessary. The mission successfully reached the BRP Sierra Madre, but it has also significantly raised the stakes in this volatile maritime theater. China's reaction was swift and angry. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson issued a stern condemnation. The Philippine vessels illegally intruded into the waters, without permission from the Chinese government, the statement read. The China Coast Guard took necessary law enforcement measures to safeguard our sovereignty. Maritime militia vessels, often disguised as fishing boats, swarmed the area. They engaged in what analysts call gray zone tactics, coercive and aggressive but short of war. This includes shouldering Philippine ships, blocking their path, and using powerful water cannons. These tactics are designed to intimidate and exhaust the other side, making it too costly and dangerous for the Philippines to maintain its presence. The risk of miscalculation is enormous. A collision or an overzealous use of force could quickly spiral out of control. The risks for China are also significant. While it possesses overwhelming military superiority, an open conflict would be disastrous for its international reputation and economic ambitions. Beijing wants to be seen as a global leader, not a regional bully. An armed clash over a disputed shoal would alienate its Southeast Asian neighbors and could draw in the United States, which has a mutual defense treaty with the Philippines. The language from Beijing has become increasingly sharp. This rhetoric signals that while Beijing may prefer to avoid a fight, its patience has limits. It is drawing a red line in the sand, or in this case, in the water. The question now is how far the Philippines is willing to push, and at what point Beijing will decide that a line has been crossed. The Philippines is not acting alone. Its renewed confidence stems in large part from the strong backing of its allies. Chief among them, the United States. The United States-Philippines Mutual Defense Treaty, signed in 1951, commits both nations to come to each other's aid in the event of an armed attack. Washington has clarified this applies to attacks on Philippine public vessels, aircraft, or armed forces, including its Coast Guard, in the South China Sea. This American security guarantee provides Manila with a critical backstop. It emboldens the Philippines to stand up to Beijing's pressure. Global reactions to the standoff have largely favored the Philippines. The European Union, Japan, Australia, Canada. They expressed concern over China's actions and reaffirmed the importance of international law. This chorus of international support helps isolate China diplomatically. The Philippines' strategy of assertive transparency has changed the game. That makes it harder to ignore what's happening. This raises the immediate risk of a clash, but also creates a potential pathway to a more stable long-term solution. The international community can no longer look away. The actions of the Philippine sailors aboard those small ships have sent a message far beyond the contested waters.